What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, and joining me is Jordan Ellis, here to recap UFC 258 that took place last weekend. Jordan, what did you think of the whole pay-per-view?
Yeah, at first I was disappointed because we lost a few fights, didn't we? We lost Bobby Green against Jim Miller, which I was really looking forward to. Gillian Robinson against Miranda Maverick. That got cancelled. Well, I think we lost one more.
Yeah, Rivera versus Munoz.
Yeah, so I was I was saying to you when we were previewing the card that I'll be tuning in from the first prelim, but I didn't in the end. I just thought because it was late night, I'd have a little nap and then I'd catch up on the fights as the night progressed. So that was a bit of a bummer, but in the end it delivered, especially the main event. And we had some, really big moments on the card as well, which we'll get into, I'm sure now.
For sure. The main event really was the biggest surprise for a lot of people, myself included, and so I think we'll jump straight into that now. And obviously that was Kamaru Usman defending his welterweight title against his former teammate, Gilbert Burns. A fight that I figured would take place a lot against the cage and with some wrestling aspects. I didn't expect straight grappling because of Burns' jiu-jitsu caliber. But hey, we got really no wrestling at all. There was a little break in the action there where it was against the cage, but not much at all.
No, not at all. And Kamaru was giving him the utmost respect in terms of wrestling, and he didn't want any of the groundwork. So I imagine in training, Gilbert's been tapping him for fun, but Kamaru was very smart to avoid that. And in the end, it was just for me, it was all about a chin and whose chin held up better than the other person's. And I think Kamaru, he's got so many talents, but one of his most underlooked features or overlooked features is the fact that he's got one of the best chins in MMA, and he was able to survive the early onslaught and then come back and put it on Burns, who weren't able to take it. So that's what it all come down to for me. But it was a great fight, a great win for Kamaru, and Gilbert Burns, he was obviously devastated in the cage, but he'll come again because he's a top welterweight.
Yeah, and I mean, the first round, it didn't look good for Usman, did it? Like, he got landed with that overhand right and then an uppercut straight after it, but he managed to stay on the feet, and that was the one time in the fight that I remember him shooting for a takedown. He didn't get it, but he shot in on the legs right after that, and that was the only time he tried to take him down throughout the fight. Burns, on the other hand, he shot him multiple times, even before he got rocked in the second, and I heard him speaking after to Megan O'Leary, and he said that he knew that he could tap Usman out. He said, I could tap Usman out several ways. And so I think that he was planning, well, he thought the fight would end up on the floor, and that's where he'd have the advantage. But on the feet, the jab of Kamaru Usman was too much for the unorthodox striking and the swinging of Burns. So after the initial flurry and getting up and not being dropped down in the first round, Usman was able to use his jab and really control the action and actually close the show with that jab. He switched stance to southpaw and then landed his power hand as the jab, and that put him down. It was pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, it really was. And props to the corner. Trevor Whitman was in there, and after round one, he was shouting at him, "You're the champion because of your jab," and he went out and started putting his jab on display. And it's just another a weapon in his arsenal. Like, he keeps getting better, Usman. I think he's one of the most adaptable and one of the most multi-talented fighters we've got. He can do it. He can do it anywhere, and just adding a jab, to his weaponry is just takes him to another level. So I'm just. It's exciting to see a champion who continues to get better, who continues to, show new things that they've got and they've been working on. And he looked fantastic. It was one of the most impressive wins of his career. Obviously the Covington win was great as well. But it was decisive. There was no controversy. Besides the first round, it weren't particularly competitive. I think once the second round begun, you seen where the fight was going, and it was just a great performance. Usman showed everything you need to show as a champion, and in the process, I think he broke one of GSP's records. So that just pushes the conversation towards where do you rank him among the welterweight greats, and I'm sure we'll get onto it, but he's definitely up there.
Yeah, and I think for Usman, a lot of criticism he got was the fact that he could just shut people down with his wrestling. I know a lot of more casual fans, but other hardcore fans as well. It's not everyone's bread and butter to watch someone take their opponent down for 25 minutes and just dominate him. And I would say that his performance against Woodley or his performance against pretty much every opponent before, even Masvidal, like where he's just used his grappling to win the fight, I would say that they were better performances in terms of they were flawless. But this was the best performance that showed what he's actually capable of if he can't wrestle, which is something that a lot of people probably preparing to fight Usman think, if I can shut down his wrestling, I'll be all right on the feet. But who knows at this point? Because he looked like a championship caliber striker on the feet, as well as his wrestling. Obviously, the jiu-jitsu is an area he needs to improve on. If he thought he was as good as Burns there, he would have gone straight into the guard and tried to close the show earlier. But hey, he doesn't need that if he can keep the fight standing or just impose his will on the ground.
Yeah, and that's the problem. He looks better when he's not allowed to wrestle people. I respect Usman as a champion, and he's a champion because he does what he does. But that Masvidal fight, it's not entertaining for fans. I don't care if you're casual or hardcore. Holding someone against the cage and stomping on the feet for 5 rounds. People aren't going to get behind that. They want to see. People like fighting. They want to see fighting, and this was a fight. Both guys going for it. But as you say, Usman got hurt in this fight. He got dropped, and in terms of himself, he prepared to just coast to a victory. But it's good for his fans. And on to the next one now, the welterweight division. I think it's live. It's cracking again. I don't think Usman has cleared out the division by any stretch of the imagination. I think there's still a lot of obstacles he's got to overcome. But at the minute, he looks like a tough one to beat. He's going to be tough to get that belt from.
So what did you think of his call out in the post fight? He said he wanted Masvidal again.
No, unless they do Ultimate Fighter with it, I don't. If they make Colby against Leon, and then obviously Masvidal's the obvious fight, but for me, it's just I don't understand. You could give Jorge the benefits of the doubt that he come in on a week's notice, but do we really want to see that fight again? Because number one, it was boring. And number two, it was very dominant. So, would the camp make such a difference? Would he be able to learn how to stop Usman controlling him against the fence and stop getting takedowns and things like that? So, I'm not sure. I'm not totally sold on it. But if they kind of pair it up with the Ultimate Fighter, that does make it a bit more interesting to me.
Even then, you can tell that the only attraction to making that fight is the money. I don't think anyone thinks that fight is going to be more competitive than the Covington and Usman fight was. And Covington, since that fight, has gone and beat a former champion, Tyron Woodley. So I feel like there are grounds to give Covington the next shot. Whereas for Masvidal, he just lost to Usman, and it wasn't even close to competitive. So I just don't understand that. I do understand it because the UFC wants to make money. But in terms of a competitive standpoint, I think there's better matchups. Just while we're on it real quick, we might as well talk about it. Leon Edwards, do you think he gets the Colby fight? Do you think they give him a title fight now? What do you think?
They could push him into a title fight. I think that's the option a lot of people would be quite happy with if they want to turn Usman round quite quick, but I don't think they do. I think it's gonna be Leon against Colby. It'll be on that March date, and then Kamaru will defend against Jorge in the meantime. It just all seems to be going that direction. I like the fight. I like the Colby against Leon fight. They seem like the two welterweights who have really been pushing. Colby wants to fight Jorge, but he's struggling to get it nailed down. Leon's been wanting to fight anyone, as you can see. He signed to fight Kamzat, who's ranked 15, and that's a generous ranking, to be fair, from the UFC. So these are two guys who've been itching for a fight, and just put them together, I think we'll get them to sign pretty quickly, pretty easily. And then beyond that, Kamaru, Jorge, doesn't make sense. I'm not really that interested in watching it, but if they put them on the Ultimate Fighter, then they fight at the end. I get it, and I'll obviously be watching it. So
on the flip side of that, we're gonna go. Sorry, on the flip side of that, what do you think Burns does next? Who do you think they give him a top? Obviously, he's going to get a top guy, but do you think it's a top 5 guy, or where do you think they go with him?
Wonderboy. If Wonderboy isn't matched up, I think that's the one that makes the most sense. Wonderboy's the one knocking on the door. He seems to be, he calling all these guys out and not being able to get anyone booked in. So I think he's ready to come back in April, May. Burns probably the same. I think that's a really, really fun fight.
For sure. I'll leave the Ultimate Fighter stuff until we get to news later. But yeah, that was a great championship fight. Something a lot of people weren't expecting, but yeah, great one. We'll move on. Before that, we had the co-main event, which was the women's flyweight bout between the highly touted prospect Macy Barber, coming off 1 loss, now 2 losses, against Alexa Grasso, who's working her way back up. Funny thing going into this matchup, I didn't realize Grasso was only ranked 15 and Barber was still 10. It was weird that Grasso's dropped that far down, but nonetheless, she managed to get the victory here, and she looked really good doing it.
Yeah, she only had that one flyweight fight, wasn't it? She's coming from strawweight, and I thought that might be that might be a hindrance to her, you know, coming up. Macy's a big girl for the weight, and she's very powerful and very, she uses the weight, you know, she's very forward motion all the time, and she's throwing big, and she's chasing you down. But Grasso, you know, she was just a bit cleaner. She, like, I think Macy having that time out the ring, wanting to get the win so bad, and it showed, I think, in the first 2 rounds, where she was a bit crude with the work, and Grasso was just too smart for her. So she'd come in swinging, and Grasso pop her with a 1-2 or just some nice shots, and she was just cleaner in the first 2 rounds. And then Macy, you know, proved what a warrior she is in the third round. She come out and she put it on, and she tried the best, but it just wasn't enough on the night. But really impressed by both girls. I think they really both put on a good show. And I think the two girls we'll be speaking about in a year, 2 or 3 time, you know, as potential title contenders. No, obviously Macy gets that second loss, but no one's really a loser in this one. They'll stay in the rankings, both of them. They'll both get a decent fight next, and yeah, I'm sure they'll both win the next fights as well, because they're both really, really talented fighters.
Thing about this fight for Macy, when I was watching it, I thought she would come out like she has in all her other fights and just go straight forward and pressure her on the cage and then try and finish her with an onslaught of punches. But she didn't really take that style until the third round. And when she did that in the third round, she had some success for a little bit there. She managed to get Grasso against the cage and landed some shots, but ultimately it was too late. I think if she had had that approach from the start, she may have found more success, but you just never know, because Grasso looks so good with her striking, and she just really pieced her up. So even the grappling exchanges they had, Grasso looked really good in those. So you never know. Before that, though, we had the middleweights. Gastelum got back in the winning column after a couple of slip-up losses there, after defeating Ian Heinisch. What do you think of this one?
It was obviously expected. I expected Kelvin to go out and make a statement against Ian Heinisch. He didn't quite do that, but he got the win. I think when we spoke about this, I was saying there's levels to this game, and Kelvin's, you know, towards the top level. I think at welterweight he'd potentially be a champion. At middleweight, he's definitely one of the top contenders. So I expected them to really easily deal with Ian, and it was a bit more competitive than I expected it to be. If I'm comparing it to a fight, I compare it to Weidman's last one. You know, when he kind of wrestled to victory against Akhmedov, and he got back in the win column, and well done for that. But it weren't impressive. I don't think anyone in the middleweight division is going to be looking at out Chris or Kelvin right now, saying that that's someone to be worried about. Ian was game. He kept going with that flying knee and kept trying his best. But at the end of the day, yeah, it is levels in this game. Kelvin is a top tier middleweight, top tier welterweight. Wherever he competes, he's going to be one of the best. And it was good to see him back in the win column, because, you know, someone like him, you don't want to see on a free fight losing streak. He's too good for that. So I'm looking forward to seeing him get back in the mix. And Ian Heinisch, he'll come again. You know, this was a big fight. He didn't, you know, shame himself by any stretch of the imagination. He'll get another big fight.
I didn't expect this from this fight. I thought it was going to be a barn burner on the feet where they're just going to throw shots, but it wasn't what it was. Gastelum really went back to his roots, I'd say, and used his wrestling a lot more, which is probably something he should have done in some of the other fights that he had, especially against Till, right? He should have been all over Till with the wrestling. I don't think from memory he even tried to take down that fight. And the Adesanya fight's the same. He didn't really shoot on Adesanya until he was hurt. So maybe if he utilized his wrestling a little bit more, he would have had success in those fights. But nonetheless, good for him to be back in the win column. He's probably 2 or 3 fights wins away from any title contention. But yeah, at least if this was a make or break fight, if he lost this one, it was going to be a hard road back.
Yeah, he had to win this one, because Ian Heinisch, as I said, it's levels, and he's lost to Hermanson, Till, and Adesanya. They are some of the top middleweights. Ian Heinisch is not in that level, not yet anyway. And I think it was Kelvin who had to kind of go out there and dominate the fight, and he did. He got I think he got a 30-27 on one scorecard, but it was 29-28. It was fairly close but clear, and back in the win column. And because he's got a name, he's been in the UFC for so long, but he's only 29. Ultimate Fighter winner, former title challenger. He's always got a chance of, you know, sneaking a title shot. He might not have to do much, a last minute call or something like that. So keep an eye on him, because he might slip into a big fight soon, and it's definitely something. He'd be a live dog in all these fights against all these top contenders. He's very talented middleweight, so he'll be back with the mix as soon as probably his next fight.
I'd agree. Another fight that ended up being a lot more wrestling than a lot of people anticipated was the Ricky Simone versus Brian Kelleher fight. Right before that, Ricky Simone as well went back to his roots, used his grappling a lot more in this, and just shut down Kelleher for the whole 15 minutes.
Yeah, and why wouldn't you do that? You know, Kelleher he's a bomber. You know, at I think this was a featherweight, but the 135 is the pair of them. So to see why stand with them, if you've got the wrestling advantage, wrestle Brian Kelleher, because otherwise you can be standing on the feet quite comfortably with him for 10 minutes, and then he's going to crack you and potentially knock you out. So very smart from Ricky Simone, and it was a big win. And that was a few in a row for him now. And I think he's a potential contender at bantamweight. I really do. I think he's got it all. He's only 28. And I think he's ready to mix it with the upper echelon guys now. I really want to see him progress in 2021, and I think we will.
Yeah, who did he lose to? He lost to Faber when Faber returned, and before that or after that, he lost to Font, I believe. So he's only really lost to he's lost to good guys. Even Faber, he might be old, but he's still a top, skill-wise fighter in that division, so it's not a terrible loss. This win was probably a good one for him to argue he should get a top 15 ranked opponent next, I'd say. Maybe you see how the O'Malley and Almeida fight goes and give him the winner of that one. Or maybe Marlon Vera. What do you think's next for Simone now?
Yeah, there's so much going on in this division. So even if it's someone slightly outside the rankings, it's still a fun fight. So Nathaniel Wood, I'm sure, is looking for a fight. I think Barcelos is still need to fight. There's a lot going on there. As you said, Sean O'Malley, Almeida, Marlon Vera. There's a lot going on, and I'm sure he'll snag a big fight sooner rather than later. But there's no rush. 28, 3-fight winning streak. He's looked close to perfect in all them fights. So I hope he gets us a big crack soon. But I'm sure it'll come in 2021. Just maybe not next. Let's see how he goes.
For sure. Opening the card, we had the middleweights, Maki Patolo versus Julian Marquez. What were your thoughts on that one, and the finish and the call out?
Yeah, it was a fun fight. It was a really fun fight. Great way to start the card. And, he knew he was down. He knew he was down, and he knew he had to get the finish, and that's what he did. It was brilliant from Marquez. But the post-fight speech just kind of stole the whole thing. It was very weird. It was WWE style, and then in the end, he just throws Miley Cyrus's name out there. So, strange, weird guys want to be tuning into to fight. Maybe I'll skip his post-fight speeches from now on, because I was honestly sitting there in my house. I was probably about 4 a.m. with my head and hands like, oh my God, that's a shame. So, what did you make of it?
Oh, it was a good finish. I definitely thought he was down going into that third round, so he did what he had to do there. Sucks for Patolo. You win in the whole fight and then you get submitted. But, hey, that's the game. Outside of that, the post-fight was quite interesting. Miley Cyrus replied, so, he did what he needed to do to get the response there. Good for him. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was the most entertaining fight, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was just a good win, and it sucked for Patolo, because literally, I think his corner were kind of half pissed off at him. I think he walked out and one of his corner got off, and he let the fight slip through his hands, and such a shame. But big win for Marquez, and I think he was saying he hasn't won a fight since 2017. So yeah, no wonder he was so excited to get on that mic and maybe went a bit over the top. But it was funny either way.
Fair enough. The feature prelim was my lock of the card. I said Rodolfo Vieira is the biggest safe bet on this card. I thought he was going to go out there and smoke Hernandez, submit him in the first. Couldn't have been more wrong with the outcome there. What did you make of that fight?
It's madness, wasn't it? It was just, I was watching, because I skipped the prelims. I went back and I'd already knew the results. I was watching the fight, knowing what was about to happen, but literally 30 seconds into the fight, Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier are on the mic saying, "Oh, it's over. It's over." And I'm just sitting there, just thinking these are going to look like idiots in a minute, because I know what's about to happen. And it just the gas tank went, and he was vulnerable, and then to actually get the submission on him is just insane for Hernandez. I'm sure he'd be speaking about that until the day he dies. I submitted Vieira in, got him in the guillotine, made them tap. Very, very impressive. And I think it was 30-1 the submission, so it was huge, and it was a huge upset. And you're right to pick him as the lock of the night, because he looked like a lock. But this is why we love fighting.
Well, here's the thing about the submission. I'm not trying to take anything away from Hernandez. Awesome performance, feather in his cap for pulling that submission off. But I feel like Vieira was just so tired. He knew he wasn't going to win the fight. He needed a way out. And you got to think from his perspective, there's two options. I get battered for 15 minutes for another 8 minutes, or I get knocked out, or I just tap. So I think it was more like he was in the position where Hernandez set up the guillotine. Even before that, he was just in turtle position, and Hernandez was trying to put an anaconda on or whatever he was going for. But Vieira just offered no defense, because I think at that point he decided, that's it, I want to be out of here. Nonetheless, I think Hernandez deserves his brown belt after that. He was saying he's a 0-stripe purple belt. So yeah, give the guy a promotion. But what a performance.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think the sayings, what is it? Fatigue makes cowards of us all, and that's what it is. I've got no imagination that Hernandez would ever be Vieira on the actual mat, do it just in a straight BJJ match. But in this situation where you're able to punch him in the face, for good 5 minutes, and then eventually someone's going to say, "Oh, just take this net, get me out of here."
Yeah,
I think that's what it was. But yeah, obviously Hernandez deserves a promotion, and Vieira, he issued a statement, and he was very humble, and he was trying to address his mistakes. So hopefully he'll come back and he'll look better. But he carries a lot of muscle at middleweight, and he's used to getting guys out of there quite quickly. So this is the UFC, and not everyone's going to just fall into your submission. Not everyone's just going to tap. So he's got to come back with some new things, and I'm sure he will.
Absolutely. We'll keep rolling through these prelims. Before that, we had Belal Muhammad's return fight, I believe. I can't remember the last time he fought. Maybe he fought recently, I'm blanking. It was Diego Lima's return fight, I know that. So Belal Muhammad took on Diego Lima. Bit of a striking fest for 3 rounds, and just Muhammad was too much for Lima in this fight. There wasn't a lot he had to offer. What did you think of it?
It was a good fight, but it for me, it's more the consequence of the fight that I look at Belal now, and I think that's four or five in a row. He's really stringing them together. I think he looked good. I think he looked good last time against Lyman Good. Before that, yeah. So he's starting to put them together, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Really interesting. Welterweight, as we said earlier, it is booming. It's starting to get starting to pop in 2021, and he's putting together a good record. So I think he might get a decent fight next.
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, he's not ranked now, or he might have been 13 or 14 or 15, somewhere around there. But you got to give him a top 10 guy after that, at least, And for Lima, he had a big break off, and he comes back and loses that one. So I don't know what you do with him.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. I know they want to make Hamzat the main event, and I don't think Muhammad's going to be able to fill a main event slot. But you've got the people around him, Robbie Lawler, Jeff Neal's around there, Magny. That could be a good fight. Damian Maia's still in the mix. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of nice fights for him. And I think one more win, and he's cracked it. He can start looking at the top 5 and things like that then. So he's making quite a bit of noise now, and I think people will start paying attention to Muhammad in 2021.
Yeah, it was a good fight for a prelim fight. I wasn't expecting too much in that one, and it really delivered for the duration of the 15 minutes. Before that, what did you think of the submission that Poliana Viana was able to pull off of Mallory Martin? She had her in that triangle for a while and ended up finishing it with an armbar. Yeah,
it's beautiful. I love these submissions. I was picking Poliana going into this fight. I've in terms of locks tonight, I really did fancy. I think I said that when we were speaking last time, and I did fancy Poliana coming into this, and she delivered. She looked really slick on the ground, and I love to see the transitions, and it was a lovely submission in the end.
Well, sure. I missed this first fight on the prelims here, so maybe you can fill me on what it was like if you caught it.
I missed it too.
You missed it?
I missed the first 2. Yeah, in the end, I missed the first 2, but I'm a big fan of Chris Gutierrez. I think we're going to have him on the channel in the next few days. So we'll be speaking to him, and I'll obviously be watching that fight beforehand. And I was picking Philip Rowe going into that fight with Gabe Green, and he weren't able to do it. So I'll be going back and watching that as well. But besides that, overall, UFC 258, it was a good, strong card. Unfortunately, it took some knocks, and they do take some knocks at that, and it did weaken it. It really did. Hopefully, we can get them fights rebooked. But I think that Kamaru Usman stole the show. He's really cemented his place amongst the welterweight best. He looks like a really dominant champion. I really like to see, and he's a fighter more capable of having fun fights. We've had Tyron Woodley, and he had a stick. He was quite defensive, and Usman's capable of being a boring fighter as well. But we get a fair few fun fights from him, and this was one of them. And Burns brought the best out of him. It was a great fight, great performance, and on to the next one then.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA. On to the next one we have this weekend, which is UFC Fight Night, Blaydes versus Lewis, which is a fight that I feel like we've broken down about 10 times now. This one's been booked a couple of times. Finally, hopefully going to see it, because last time we covered this one, it fell through on the fight week. Let's hope it's not that going to happen again. This is pretty much a wrestler versus striker fight. There's no hiding that one. I expect Blaydes to get the win here. I will be very surprised if he doesn't. What do you think of the fight?
Yeah, I think I've said it a few times. I don't like this fight, and the fact we've had to speak about it a few times is unfortunate, because I think Blaydes is going to wrestle him for 5 rounds, and I think it's going to be really boring. And I want Derrick Lewis to prove me wrong and prove that he can hang with him. But I just don't even think Derrick Lewis will survive the 5 rounds. I think he'll get tapped at some point. But I just don't see anything other than Blaydes rolling over him and just making it look easy. And I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong, because otherwise we're in for a boring night.
I believe it's either going to be Blaydes submitting him in the second or third, or it'll be Lewis landing something ridiculous in the early goings of the fight, or maybe even late in the fight. Who knows? If he survives 2 rounds and then lands something huge. I don't expect this to go to decision, thankfully. I don't think it's going to be 25 minutes of wrestling. If Lewis can't get him out of there, Blaydes is going to get him out of there with a submission. Or who knows? Blaydes might choose to stand and just... Because he's not like a terrible striker. We saw him against JDS. He stood with him and outboxed him and knocked him out. So we could actually... Fingers crossed, we could get an exciting striking fight here. I just don't expect it to happen. But hey, let's hope so.
That's hopeful thinking. I think JDS is a bit more gun-shy. He's a bit more chinny at this point. Derrick Lewis is still very strong on the feet, and it's basically his only weapon. I think if you take that power, them hands away from Derrick Lewis, you're making such an easy night for yourself. And I don't think Blaydes, although he wants to prove himself, I don't think this is the way to do it, because as we've seen, Volkov was outstriking him and got caught. So it's pointless taking the risk. For me, Blaydes, he needs to make a statement by going out and finishing him quickly, in terms of once he's on the floor, you need to be aggressive in terms of chasing submissions, landing, ground and pound, and using the position. I don't want to see holding. I don't want to see any of this, but I think that's what we might get. So I'm interested to see how it plays out. I really do think this is a big fight for the heavyweight division. Both of them are top contenders. They'll probably need one more win after this, whoever wins. But definitely a potential title shot is coming for Blaydes, in 2021, 2022, if he keeps rolling like this.
Yeah, in terms of top heavy cards, this is one of those. So we'll keep rolling through these. But the co-main event is the women's bantamweight bout between Ketlen Vieira and Yana Kunitskaya. I don't understand, not trying to be rude against women's MMA, but I don't know how this fight is a co-main event. Maybe because they've stacked the 2 pay-per-views in March so heavy, and they're just looking to roll through the rest of these fights now. I think there's better fights in there. It could be the co-main event. But hey, this is what we've got. What do you think of that matchup?
The only reason I think they do this, I think it's for time, and I think they assume that the women's fights would go to decision, and then it can bring them out at a normal time for finish. Because if they're expecting heavyweights to finish people quickly, you've got Arlovsky and Tom Aspinall. That's probably not going to go too long. Olenek against Chris Daukaus, that might not go the distance as well. So I think it's just a mix in terms of time. They just want it to flow naturally rather than have to put some filler in there. But as you said, this fight's not co-main event worthy. I really do like Ketlen Vieira. Think it's she got a win over Eubanks last time to come back from an Aldana loss, and I think she should win here again. I think she's a true contender at bantamweight, and she should get by in this one. What do you think?
I tend to agree with you. I think she's going to keep going forward, and Kunitskaya going to have to take a step back. But hey, I guess we'll find out next weekend. Before that, we have the featherweights, Charles Rosa and Darrick Minner, who I had got no clue who that is. I imagine he's a Contender Series guy from the thumbnail I'm seeing here. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me check. I like Charles Rosa. He really impressed me in that Bryce Mitchell fight. He was able to hang with him on ground, and he was defending everything, and he's doing really well. And then obviously it was great to see him get a win last time out.
Yeah.
So it's just about keeping on momentum. Did he come in on last notice for this, Derrick? No, I remember him now. He beat that TJ Laramine guy and tapped him in with a round. He's very well known for his guillotine. I think right. He's well known for his submissions, and TJ was a big favourite going into that fight, and you look at the record, 25-11, doesn't say much, but when I looked at them both in the cage together, he's bigger, and I kind of fancied him, and I was looking at the submission prices, and he was very impressive. So really fun fight, and obviously we've got two highly respectable BJJ players as well, so it'd be interesting. Probably end up on the feet for 3 rounds, but interesting fight.
Yeah, they seem to be feeding Rosa grapplers if that's the case, because I mean he had Bryce Mitchell, then he had someone in the meantime that I'm forgetting, but then he's got Minner as well. I believe his last opponent was a Contender Series guy too, so he really needs to start making some ground to push himself up towards more ranked opponents at this stage. But hey, he gets this win here. He's looking at someone border 15 next, I'd imagine. Heavyweights before that, we have Alexei Olenek, the grappler. Everyone knows Alexei Olenek. He's been in the sport for so long. He's got some ridiculous record. I can't remember off the top of my head, but his record is just insane. And he's taking on Chris Daukaus. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Daukaus. I really do. I think he's obviously very talented, Olenek, but he's in his 40s and he's 43 now. Like, the fact that he's still knocking about is just crazy, especially at this level. You know, beef Redoom and Maurice Green in 2020. Like, it's madness, really. But I think Daukaus has looked fantastic every time I've seen him. He puts his hands together well, and I think he's just going to overwhelm Olenek in this one. I really think he's going to have too much, and he's got to knock him out quite quickly.
You got to beat Olenek that way, right? Because people aren't going to grapple with Olenek. And I thought in that Wadoom versus Olenek fight, Wadoom would have the advantage on the ground. It just wasn't the case. I'm looking at his record. It's 59-13. That is just ridiculous. But I expect it to be 60-13 after this. I think that if he can get it to the ground, which I expect him to try and do quickly, he can definitely submit Daukaus. And it'll either be a knockout submission, it'll be a quick night for these two heavyweights, and interested to see how that one goes. Before that, we have to be announced versus Rafael Alves. I don't know if you've got the actual fighter's name on your page.
I got it. I've got Pat Sabatini. Raphael, the weird with these cards, because even Charles Rosa against Derrick Minner, I wouldn't have that in the mix either. But it's the heavyweights that really stand out to me, and then there's a few on the undercard that I really like as well. So we'll get into them. But yeah, Rafael Alves against Pat Sabatini is who I've got. I don't know if that's been
I don't know either as far. So there's no point in me breaking that one down. I guess we'll jump to the heavyweights at the start of the card then, yeah?
Yeah, let's go.
So we have Andrei Arlovski, who's a former champion, veteran, everyone knows him, taking on Tom Aspinall, who came in 2 fights ago, I believe. He's got a 2-fight win streak in the UFC. He just looks fantastic on his feet so far. What do you think of this fight?
It's a big jump up for Tom. I think it's I think he's got a bit of hype around him. I think he was already a fairly big name in the UK, and I think a lot of the Americans and the people in the wider world have kind of taken to him really quickly. I think people rank him amongst the best prospects we've got in the UFC. But Andrei Arlovski, he's an old one as well, isn't he? And he's not an easy night for anyone. Like, who was it last time? Tanner Bosa had a bit of hype about him. He just shut that down. Philip Lindsay, he shut him down. And you've got to be one of the best to take Arlovski out. I know he's lost a few by knockout early, but it's been against the top guys. It's been the Rosenstrucks, it's been the Francis Ngannou's and people like that. So I expect Tom to eventually, maybe in the second, get him out today. I'm obviously rooting for Tommy. He's from England. He's one of our guys, but I think this is a big jump in levels, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he deals with it.
Yeah, I think to get Arlovski out of there real quick, you have to be one of those heavy-handed strikers that his last couple opponents just haven't been. Aspinall, we don't know. Well, I don't know. I haven't seen his old fights, but from what I've seen in UFC, he's technically sound. He's a great striker. He has power, but does he have the power to just shut Arlovski out like that? I don't know, because if they go at a striking wall for 15 minutes, it can go either way. So, very interesting fight, and it'll be a bit of a career. What's the word I'm looking for here? This is a defining fight for Aspinall's UFC run, that's for sure.
Absolutely, because if he goes and knocks out Arlovski out in the first round, the momentum rolls. This heavyweight division isn't that deep. Once you've beat Arlovski, you're kind of looking at the upper echelons guys, you're looking at ranked guys, and that's who he could be in with next, Tom. But Orlovsky's a tricky customer and he's hard to nail down. So Tom's not just going to go in and wing punches. He's not that type of fighter. He's quite technical, as you said, and he's going to look for them straight shots. And then once he hits him, he'll pounce on him. But until then, until he lands clean, it's going to be a cagey affair, and it could go for 3 rounds. So very interesting fight on this card. It's one of my favorite fights besides the main event, and I'm really interested to see how it goes.
For sure. We'll pick through these prelims then. I'll let you jump and grab which ones you want. What do you think?
Well, the first name that stands out is Jared Gordon. We spoke to him the other day about his fight with Danny Chavez, and he's very hyped, and he's looking to keep the momentum going because he looked great last time out. I thought he looked great anyway, beating Chris Fishgold, and I expect him to win again in this one. I think he's a really talented fighter, especially at featherweight. I think he looked great, and I'm really expecting a good performance from him. And besides that, it was meant to be Drakkar Klose against Jai Herbert. Herbert's had to pull out, which is unfortunate, but he's got Luis Pena in there, which is again another good fight. There's a lot of names that are popping out. Who pops out to you?
Well, I believe it was meant to be Pena versus Herbert, not Klose versus Herbert. I think Klose is the replacement for Herbert.
No.
You sure?
No, Klose. Yeah, we interviewed him.
Oh, okay, there you go. You know better than me then. But yeah, those names stand out, so that'll be a good one, a fun one, a lightweight. Eddie Wineland making his return after getting knocked out by O'Malley against John Castaneda. It'll be an interesting fight, see where Wineland's at after suffering that knockout loss. Dobson's back on the card against Casey O'Neill. I believe she is a prospect from Australia. I believe she's from Eternal MMA, the promotion here. Let me just double check that so I'm not lying. Maybe I'm wrong? No, I'm right. That's yeah. Let me just Google her record real quick. If it is the person I think it is, that'll be an interesting fight because she's just smashed through everyone she's fought here in Australia. Yeah, that's her. So that'll be an interesting one. She's fought in UAE Warriors. I didn't know that. There you go. But Eternal Champion. I'm keen to see that one, see where she stands against this talent, this caliber of competition against Dobson, who's someone we saw. Who'd she fight? It was an upset she had not long ago. I'm blanking. Is that Agapova?
I remember. Yeah, Agapova.
That's right. So maybe O'Neill will be the same. Maybe O'Neill's got all this hype coming in here, and then we'll go and get finished by Dobson again. But who knows? That'll be an interesting one. Any other fights in here before we wrap it up?
Julian Rosa's taking on Nate Landwehr. I think that's a really good fight as well. Julian coming in as UFC return, and he got one of the biggest upsets of the year against Sean Woodson as well. So that was big, and Nate's looked great in his fights. He's been a really fun watcher. I think that might be a war, in terms of looking at fights of the night and making early predictions. That might be the one. And then Draco Rodriguez, I think he's got a lot of hype. Draco coming in from the Contender Series. I remember we did an interview with his opponents, I think, before that, and it went off the charts in terms of views and comments, and it was all Draco's fans, chiming in on it. So I think he's one to watch out for. 24, 7-1, got a bit of hype behind him. Clearly got a fan base behind him, and if he can go in and make a statement on his UFC debut, you might start to see the ball roll with him.
Yeah, we'll jump on news now. That pretty much do that card. First thing that comes to mind, well, obviously do the Ultimate Fighter first. Dana White came out and said there was 2 welterweights going to headline coach the Ultimate Fighter. Pretty much unconfirmed rumor that everyone had was that it was going to be Colby and Masvidal. I was speaking to James Lynch yesterday, I believe, and he was saying that they couldn't strike a deal. I can't remember why. I think it was Masvidal didn't want to coach against Colby. He wanted to fight Colby, but didn't want to coach against him. So there was something to do with that. He didn't want to coach against him, so they're looking for someone else to replace Colby now. Obviously, they're trying to get him to fight Leon. Who do you think he coaches against, if he coaches? And what do you think?
Yeah, we've picked up on this before, but I think it's definitely it's Kamaru and it's Jorge. I think that is the way to go, and Colby against Leon is the way to go. I think obviously I'm not that keen on seeing Usman against Masvidal, but I think with a bit of build up, with the tough background, and obviously Kamaru was an Ultimate Fighter winner, so it'd be nice to see him go back. I think that's where they're going to go with it, and I think that's probably the way they should go with it. If they couldn't nail Colby, down, and for some reason, Jorge doesn't want to fight him or be in his vicinity or whatever he doesn't want to do, Usman's the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. I really think they should try and make that Colby versus Masvidal season, though, because how good would that be for TV? But hey, if it's going to turn into something like Masvidal clearly thinks it will, where they can't be in the same room with each other, more than the season with Chael and who was that against? I'm blanking here. What was that? Wanderlei?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it could be something like that,
Yeah, it all depends, doesn't it? But to be fair, if what you're saying is true, I'm surprised they're not pulling Jorge out rather than Colby. And for me, I'd be much more happier if they made Kamaru and Colby the tough people, the tough coaches, and then they fought at the end, because I think Colby's ready. Like, in terms of who's the next contender in line, who deserves the next shot, I think it is Colby. As you said, he's just beat Tyrone Woodley, and he's had one of the best fights you can give Kamaru Usman. So I would prefer to see that. It just doesn't seem like the direction we're going in. Hopefully, you get an announcement soon. He's pinned it now to welterweight. Hopefully, you just get something signed, and we can know where this division's heading.
For sure. We'll jump divisions then. Lightweight. Dana White come out and said he wants 1 through 9 to fight to see who's the true champion in the division. Pretty much said that Khabib will be leaving, but he did add that he expects after all these people fight, Khabib will return to fight the number 1 contender. What do you think? Who reigns supreme at the end of this? And do you think they actually do genuine matchmaking from 1 through 9? Or do you think it'll be, let's just have 2 people fight and then crown one of them a champ? What do you think?
I honestly think Dana's just trying to buy time at the minute. I think he still believes he can convince Khabib to come back, and he's desperate not to allow Khabib to relinquish the title, because that's one of his biggest stars and one of his most dominant champions. So I think he's just buying time. He's like, let's let these guys fight. Let's not talk about, Dustin Poirier, who clearly deserves a title shot. We're going to make them all fight each other. And then in the meantime, I'm going to be speaking to Khabib and trying to convince him to come back. So I think that's what's going on with this. I don't think we're going to see these contenders fight. I think we're going to see Conor and Dustin rematch again, and Oliveira and Gaethje probably squared off, and Nate Diaz is in there so he can fight someone, but up at 170. It's going to be fun whatever happens. I just don't think we're going to get some Bellator style tournaments. I think in the end, once Khabib gives his definitive decision, relinquishes the belt will be on the line within a few months.
So what are your thoughts on the Conor versus Dustin trilogy fight next?
Yeah, I think it's the fight to make. I don't, the 1-for-1. I think Conor, he clearly looked a bit rusty and a bit out of sorts. And a lot of people have said, it was more what Conor did bad rather than what Dustin did good. And without taking credit away, I do think he underperformed Conor. So I'd want to see that fight again. I'd be tuning in to see. I don't think there's anyone besides Dustin in the lightweight division who clearly deserves a title shot. And I know Oliveira's getting a lot of hype, but his biggest win was Tony Ferguson, and Tony Ferguson was coming off a really bad loss anyway. So it's not the same as beating Tony, who was streaking and on a crazy streak. So if Oliveira potentially needs one more, and why not give him Justin Gaethje and let the rest of them fight each other? It's such an exciting division, and it's going to be fun whatever happens. I'm not desperate to see Dustin against Charles Oliveira. I'd honestly prefer to see him against McGregor again.
Thing about the McGregor rematch, in my opinion, is I'm all for them having their trilogy fight. They want to do it now. I don't know why you'd want to do it now, because that's a dangerous position for Conor, especially if he loses a second one. It's like really rough territory then. But hey, you do the trilogy fight. The problem I would have with it is if they put the belt on the line. I don't think you can put the title on the line in a fight when Conor just lost to Dustin, because if he wins against Dustin this time, no one's going to see him as the champion. You know what I mean? He's coming off a loss in his fight, a couple of losses in a row, No, actually, he beat Cowboy, my bad. He's coming off one loss and then having another win in a rematch. I just don't think it makes sense for him to win the belt off that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. If you're looking at terms of rankings, Poirier against Oliveira is probably the fight to make for the title, but I just don't think, if they did put the title on the line for Dustin Conor, I don't feel like someone's getting robbed. I don't feel like Oliveira's, being shafted. I don't think he's in that position yet, and I think he probably does need one more win. So, if they put it on the line, that's what they do. But as I said, I think Dana still is still going for Khabib. I think that's his priority, is to try and convince Khabib to come back. So, And I really don't think the belt adds much to this fight in terms of Dustin would prefer to fight Conor than fight for the belt right now. You know, it's at this stage of his career, he's in his 30s, he's got a family, you know, go and make your money. And I think that's what he should be aiming for. And I think that's what he is. You know, we called out Diaz as well. The belt will come with wins and all. And I think he knows that as well. So it's just being patient, waiting it out and earning some big money in the meantime.
To finish it off here, we'll go to the other tournament, which is the Bellator light heavyweight tournament. Did you see that, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's huge. It really is huge, and it's big for Bellator because they've been saying about this for a while now about their 205-pound divisions, the best in MMA, and I think once this ball gets rolling with this tournament, I think a lot of people will start to get on board of it because I think it's really strong, the division, and seeing them all match up against each other and fight it out, it's going to be epic, and especially that first fight, that Yoel Romero anti Rumble Johnson fight, that's a huge fight, and it's one that you'd see high up on a UFC pay-per-view. It's that good of a fight, and credit for Bellator for doing it. They've really pulled it out the bag with this one.
Yeah, I was taking a look at the roster for it, and 6 of the 8 fighters are UFC alumni from memory. So a lot of familiar names for people that have just watched the UFC their whole life to come over to Bellator now and really pay attention to this tournament. I don't know how I feel about them doing the Rumble versus Romero fight straight off the bat. I know Scott Coker said that when you have that fight, you have to make it, but I feel like they could have built it a little bit by giving them a different opponent. I don't expect either of them to lose to a lot of the other guys in there, let's be honest. If I'm having to pick between the other guys, I think Romero and Rumble are probably 2 of the more solid fighters in there. But hey, it's going to happen straight off the bat. One of them's going to continue on, the other one's going to disappear for a little bit.
Yeah, I do tend to agree with Scott Coker. You don't take any risks with that fight, just put it on. Rumble's been out there, he's been retired for a few years now. He might not look good. Romero's on a losing streak. He's coming up to 205 pounds. So, you know, you could put them in with Machida and expect them to, you know, get past them. But Machida's still a tricky customer and could potentially outpunt them for 3 to 5 rounds. So, I do tend to just make it now, give the fans what they want rather than rolling the dice on this one. I'm very happy we're going to see it in the next few.
Sure, and we'll definitely preview that one before it does happen because there are a couple of big fights on there. But yeah, that's pretty much does it for today. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll speak to you next week to recap all the action.